is how you conduct yourself in a democracy?
Joey Clark.
Welcome back to News and Views in the afternoon. I'm your host, Joey Clark. Eddie Bader's still in the house.
Here, buddy.
How you doing?
Hanging in here like a hair in a biscuit.
Well, and as promised, we have... You come up with that yourself?
Nah, I stole that from an old boss.
Okay.
From
Did he come up with it?
He probably stole it from his granddaddy.
All right. We have in the studio state senator currently, Greg Albritton. He is running for Congress, candidate for Congress. Now, this is District 2. Greg, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
We're all right. I mean, and this is Eddie, if you haven't already met.
Yeah, we met Eddie. He didn't use that phrase on me, though.
Well, and I've got to give this out. I didn't give it to Robin, but I always give our candidates a pass. If he says something, feel free to hit him right in the face. He deserves it.
Steve Marshall has said that would be illegal.
He's the only one.
He's the only one.
The sheriff gave me a pass, like everybody else.
The question is, would he prosecute?
Oh, dang, I didn't get that answer.
Right, it might have been just officially uphold the law, and I could still get away with it. Anyway,
I look into that.
The first question I ask everybody running for office, Greg, and it could be for a state position, or if one day I interview a president for the United States candidate, I ask the same thing. Why do this to yourself? Why run for Congress?
It's fun.
All right.
Nothing I like better, right? Traveling across 13 counties. I am. Listen, I don't. That's a good question. It's a tough job. Running for office is a tough job, especially over a district like this that's never been created. This is a conglomerate of 3 different districts. The biggest difficulty is trying to figure out if people know what district they live in and who they're voting for. And that's true throughout, whether it's be 6, 7, 2, or 1. They don't know. And that's an education. And we don't have time enough to get that soaked in before the primary. It's an interesting endeavor.
Well, and it does seem like these new districts sort of opened up everything. So a lot of folks jumping on the Republican side in this new district too, even more on the Democratic side of this.
It's an open seat. That's how it is now. You know, Barry Moore chose to run into District 1, and that opened up the floodgates, if you will. But that's interesting. That's a good thing. Having people involved in the process is what this process is about.
Yes, sir. Now, for folks who don't know you, let's do a little bio. Where'd you grow up here?
Atmore, Alabama. Born and raised in Atmore, Alabama. Left when I was 19, and did lots of different things. If you want to hear about some of that, but we don't have time for all of it. Moved back to Atmore after my Senate district changed. When I ran in my first Senate district, it was 8 counties. Mm-hmm. Now it's 4. So when you get down to it, where are you going to live type thing. So anyway, that's what brought me back into Atmore. That was back in 17. We changed the residence into Atmore.
Now, but for a time you were in the Navy. You were a naval officer, right?
Yeah. I eventually retired from the Navy. Yep.
And and then you went and got a bunch of degrees, or like you just wanted to keep learning?
No, I had to have a job. Okay?
Oh no, this is fantastic, and I've heard, we've met in passing, but I've heard a lot of great things about from your colleagues say there in the state Senate, good things.
I'm paying them too much.
So, like, if you had to describe your time in the state Senate, how do you think that prepares you to work in the Congress?
I know how to write bills. All right, and that's what I typically do. And started when I was in the House years ago, is I discovered that most bills are written by staff. That's the professionals, and you have to have it done to go through that way to be formatted and such. But if you want this bill, if that's going to be my bill, I have, and in many cases, I'll write the sucker myself, and then I give it to LSA to refurbish and to make sure that it fits the format and things like that. I know how and what I want to put in legislation, and that's what I do. I know how to get the bills passed. It's the same process. It's just a lower level, smaller level, 1 in 50, 100, whatever, 140 we have on the state level, but 435, 535 with the Senate is a whole different ball game as far as numbers. But the process is the same. Many of the rules are mirrored between each other. So I'm ready to go.
So I'd imagine, especially just doing committee work here in the state government or up in the Congress, you need to have command. If it's your bill, you need to have command of it in the sense that you're not just selling it to the public, you're selling it to your colleagues.
Correct.
And you have to be able to describe second, third order kind of effects of a thing if they have that question.
Exactly. You have to, and most bills, as you know, not all of them, but most of them take 1, 2, 3, sometimes more efforts to get passed,
Right.
because that's called vetting, so that you can get the bugs worked out mostly.
Except when we're in an emergency, we can pass TARP pretty quick, right? Or
ARPA or CARES,
Right.
or Obamacare, or something along that line. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, if it's a crisis, just get it done. We'll figure out we'll have to pass the bill to find out what's in it. Again, folks, we're talking to Greg Albritton, running for Congress District 2 here in Alabama. So let's what are your, say, top three when you look at what's facing the nation? What are the top three issues you think?
On the federal level,
Yes.
the top three, number one is immigration. Now, that's a misnomer. We have no immigration right now. What we have is an invasion. We have no way to check people in and out. Even when you're trying to do it legally, it takes years to get through, unless you go to the north or southern border and walk across. That's the issue. We've got to stop that. We don't need additional legislation. All we have to do is enforce the laws that's on the books. That's it. We need to simply say, here is the law, go do it. That's all we have to do with immigration or invasion. Yeah.
Well, and one of my favorite lines, I think it's Ayn Rand, actually, is mistakes of this magnitude are not made innocently. Like, I don't think this is a mistake.
It
seeing
isn't. It was
Right.
clearly done. I mean, President Biden, when he came in, he immediately reversed all those controls and all the methodology, stopped everything. He intentionally did that for a purpose, and that was because that was the Democrat agenda, period. He has not changed on that. He is not going to change on that. This idea that they're going to pass a legislation, we did that back in the 90s. We did that back in the early 2000s. That's a facade. They want the borders open, and they're successful in allowing it to be so.
So that's number one. What would be your number two?
Economy, the budget, and particularly our economy is driven by budget. Did y'all hear the numbers about GDP recently?
3.3, right?
Yeah, 3.3. You know why it's 3.3? It's because of government spending.
Yes, sir.
Most of that is government spending. It is not individual. It is not private investment. That's the problem. The numbers that we're looking at do not register what the economy, the private economy is doing, is measuring what the government is doing, and that's our problem. We are in the process of changing from a capitalist system into a socialist system. Now, that's a pretty strong statement, but that's where we're headed.
That's where we're headed.
And until we get control of the money, we're going to lose control of our economy. Does that make any sense?
It makes absolute sense. One of the guys that we share often on the show, Peter St. Onge, he's an economics professor, said something like 40% of that 3.3% GDP growth was government spending. Like,
He's a euphemistic guy, isn't he?
yeah, just a little bit. But it's just, it's amazing. Like, you're seeing more and more folks are on the government dole, not in the sense like you think welfare or corporate welfare even, but more and more folks are being paid by the government to work. And you got to wonder, this isn't going to end well. Thank God we ain't Venezuela yet, but it seems like we need to go in the opposite direction fast.
True, but again, what we have here is a mixture it's like baking a cake, and you put all the ingredients in. You can't take all those ingredients out. You either have to start anew, or you have to change it up, and it takes a long time to do that. Look, I'm on the general fund with the state. In Alabama, we were having major problems a few years ago. If you'll recall, we had proration about every other or every third year. All right, that was because of the process we used and things. When Republicans took over, we changed that. We changed the process, we changed the methodologies, we put guidelines on, and all of those details we worked at. We were broke. It's taken us a number of years, but now we have surpluses. Now we're able to pay every bill. We're able to attack problems that we haven't dealt with in decades and generations. And we're doing that now because we planned for it and we worked on it. It took us years to get there. The same is true with the feds. It's going to take us a long time, but we've got to start that process. We've got to stop what we're doing and do something different to move backwards. I'm not talking about shutting down government. You can't do that. I'm not talking about stopping paychecks or Social Security, anything like that. I'm talking about looking seriously of the policies and the procedures, changing those up, and you can do it over time to bring us back to sanity.
And so what would be your number three? We have, border security, stopping the invasion. We have the budget and the economy. What would be
I'm
number
retired naval officer, all right, military. Our
sir.
military is in difficult times right now.
Yeah.
You see the training accidents. That is
Not
a
only that,
symptom of the
You see
problem.
the Navy dropping their standards. No longer have to be a high school receiver of a high school diploma.
Exactly. Now, being Navy, I can say that's true with most Marines, but I better not say
Right.
that. Anyway,
Right. But it's not supposed to spread. It's supposed to be going the other way.
yeah, you're correct. We are the government can do two things real well, and that is break things and kill folks.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's what they very often do with the things that they touch. But the military should be the epitome of that. That's their job.
It always has been.
And we are not that. We don't have, it seems as to whether we even have that capability or desire. We've got to change back to the warrior mentality.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to change back to planning on how we defend ourselves. And you don't defend by sitting back and holding up placards. You attack. And we've got to find that balance back again and train our people. That's why we can't recruit people.
Right.
We've
That's the
lost our
recruiting
mission.
problem.
We've
Right.
lost our mission there.
Amen.
That's my third one.
No, and amen. So going to number two, I believe we're still working off of spending levels that were agreed to by Richard Shelby and Patrick Leahy on the way out the door. And there's just been continuing resolutions ever since. And I know Richard Shelby said you got to be bipartisan, but I'm like, well, that's one last big bipartisan thing that you left us there, kind sir. But, when you look at the process Congress does, we've had both senators on the show recently talking about how Schumer's just run out the clock, that in particular, Senator Britt said the Appropriations Committee did their job. They got all these individuals' bills done. So how do you break the logjam in the sense that the logjam seems to be a tried and true tactic of D.C., you get these last second, like what we're seeing with this border Ukraine agreement they're trying to put
The
together.
frustration, and I've talked to sitting congressmen on this other times and such, and plus I see the only way you can change that, frankly, on the long term, is by changing the philosophy. The only way you can change the philosophy is by putting folks in that don't have this philosophy. All right.
Amen.
Now, if you want to go DNR, that's the difference between DNR. All right. I can't tell you what the national does, but I can tell you what's happened in Alabama. And you can see that clearly. As soon as Republicans took control in Alabama, we started that financial process. We started it immediately.
Mm-hmm.
We even had to come in and borrow money. We borrowed money from ourselves, if you'll recall. And when we did, there was, oh, you're not going to pay it back? Well, we did. In fact, this past February, we paid in the remaining balance that we owed to the ATF. We don't owe the Alabama citizens anything now. We paid our debts. No government, well, I shouldn't say that. Rarely does government do that. We've done that. We need more of that in Washington. That's what I will bring. It's not only the promise to do that, but the history that I have done that.
Amen. And again, folks, we're talking to Greg Albritton. He is running for Congress in District 2 here, the brand new District 2. Going back to your number one, it was big news, I guess, last week.
What was number one?
I like you, Greg. So essentially, now I've forgotten what number one is. No, but the governor of Texas,
Yeah.
and all the support, including from Governor Ivey, of all these states, trying to enforce the border because the Biden administration won't. Do you support them in that effort?
I do, indeed. In fact, we have to. If the feds are not enforcing the law, then that falls to the lower level, i.e., the states, to enforce that law. We have that obligation. Governor Abbott is absolutely correct. He has that obligation and duty.
Yeah.
Now, I understand the Supreme Court's latest decision dealing with the race war, that had to deal with sovereignty. Which one is more sovereign?
Right.
I agree with that. But that sovereignty on this level and at this point has broken down. And the only stopgap is state. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's costing the states huge sums. It's costing the feds huge sums, which means that's why we're borrowing somewhere between 50 and 80 billion dollars a day, every single day, to meet our obligations. That's just debt that we're incurring. That's printing money.
And then going back to number 3, kind of our loss of mission abroad. And it the questions can sometimes center around what are our capabilities? Are we staying ahead of the curve in terms of technological capabilities? Sometimes it's capacity. You've seen kind of a dearth of ammunition, for instance, when it comes to Ukraine. But the one I worry about the most is just, you could have all the capacity and capabilities in the world, but it doesn't seem like we have the will. And it goes to your point of we don't have the mission. How did we even begin? What in your mind is kind of a reframe of the current situation into something more optimal?
To get to that, let me tell you the history here. You talked about the budget, and we don't do budgeting process. We only do CRs. We have deteriorated to that point. That's the legislature's fault. It is also the legislature's fault of where we are here, which is the declaration of war is constitutionally in the hands of the Congress, not the president.
Right.
All right. You don't do it by a resolution, by what was it? The Vietnam resolution. I forget what the
War Powers Act.
Yeah, not the War Powers Act, when the ships came in.
Tonkin
Gulf. Gulf.
Yeah.
Gulf of Tonkin.
Okay.
Yeah.
When that occurred. You don't go to war like that. You have an actual declaration of war if you're going to. Yeah, immediacy issues have to come up, and you got to defend, like, different things. But you do go to war when you're going to go to war. You get the country to decide that through the Congress. We, as a Congress, have not done that since when? 1941.
I was going to say forever.
41.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
But how many wars have we fought? How many people have been killed along that line? We've got to go back to that. The legislature's got to get the control there back. Now, that doesn't mean we have to have an all-out war, but we've got to have the legislature setting the parameters there, setting the guidelines there, and setting the goals there, so that the mission creep and such doesn't occur on the executive. And what we've done, the legislature's just bequeathed that to the executive, and that's where we've got to get back to.
Is there any big lessons learned in particular from, the wars that shaped, as I was growing up, Iraq and Afghanistan? Like, when we look back on that, what were some of the big mistakes we should
Vietnam,
never be? Yeah, like Vietnam.
Continue on. First off is there's in and out. How you, at least, again, when declaration of war, the next thing came up is the unconditional surrenders, that we're going to destroy you until we get to surrender something. What we have done previously since that time frame is we've gone in with nebulous goals. Those goals change because circumstances change, and the Congress is never involved with any of those changes. And then you get squabblings between military branches, you get squabblings between other allies, and you don't have a united front. You've got to have a united front involved with this, and that involves with the legislature, or begins with the legislature. There's got to be more control. That's our job.
Amen.
To be able to put that.
Well, what can you do to fix that? We all know
first
a
off,
lot of that.
It's just
blames
like
at y'all's feet. But
you got to recapture. Recapturing is always worse than letting go.
Oh yeah, sure.
You first got to recognize it and start talking about it. That's the first
Acknowledge
thing. It. Exactly. That's true with the war powers, as you've talked about, or with the budgets. Somebody's got to be there to talk about it. And then you got to have a plan on how you're going to resolve it. And then you got to agree on whatever, if there's legislation, how to do that. It's not an easy job. But
do you have support
unless
in
you
getting
start
that done?
I think so.
Good.
Most of us recognize, you guys do, I
Yeah.
do too, about where we've gone wrong. Now we need to address it. I'd like to start talking about that. I'd like to start working with folks to bring us together as to how we can get some controls on that.
Yes, sir.
Amen. Well, we got to hit a quick break here. Again, folks, we're talking to...
Already?
Yeah, but we'll come back.
We're coming back.
All right.
Yeah. I told you, I liked you, Greg. We're going to do another segment here. Get out. We'll be right back, folks. More news and views with Greg Albritton after this.
Joey Clark.
Welcome back to News and Views in the afternoon. Again, in the studio with us, we have candidate for Congress, Greg Albritton. He is running for Congress in District 2, going for the Republican nomination right now. And pretty competitive, I would say. This race is shaping up to be pretty competitive indeed. If you had to describe the new district, because I know there are a lot of folks, Greg, having trouble going, you mentioned that earlier. Who's like, how would you describe the district?
Jigsaw.
Yeah.
It's 13 counties, 2 of which are split, Mobile and Clark. All the others are whole counties. And it runs from Georgia, Phoenix City, down to Mississippi, Citronelle. And there's not a single solid roadway that you can travel from one end to the other.
Oh, daggone.
All right. It was a contortionist to get it done, but it's there. I think it was improperly done, but it's there. This is what we got to deal with.
Right.
Well, and that's a shame. But if you look at this new district, what are some of the things that you could do as their congressman? What are sort of the economic assets we have in the district? What sort of ways, depending on what committees you get on, can we look out for this district in particular?
Well, first off, let me say this. Of the 13 counties, 1 county of that last census had an increase in population, small. That was Mobile. 1 county stayed stagnant. That was Pike. The other 11 counties declined in population. That is a drain of resources, a drain of people, which we cannot tolerate. It continually goes. We've got to find how to stop that. One of the ways we stop that is to create and build our infrastructure. As I mentioned, there's no roadways going through. We've got some of them are 4 lanes, some of them are 2 lane. They're all disjointed and such. We've got to draw this area east-west together. Alabama's a north-south state. All right.
All right.
We've got to draw it in together east-west. And since these districts have been drawn like this, let's take advantage and do that.
Right.
And let's put that infrastructure together. Not just roadways, but railways. And not just railways, but also let's tie in the riverways that we have.
We got them.
Oh, yeah.
We do, but they're underutilized.
I agree 100%.
All of this area is an underutilization of Alabama. It's a matter of Alabama being developed correctly. Mobile's the economic engine of this area, and that's what I want to do. This area is also affected by the military. You've got, of course, Maxwell. You've got Rucker, which is just outside. You got Columbus, Georgia, over there at Phoenix City. Mm-hmm. And you've got the Coast Guard in Mobile. I'm the only vet out of, 20 candidates?
Right.
Okay. I'm the only vet running for this office. The only one. I know what the military is like. I know these areas. I know how to do those things. And we can employ that to draw in the resources to build out the infrastructure. And that includes internet.
Yes. Absolutely need that built out.
Airports.
Airports,
yes,
big time.
Yeah, big time.
Big time.
So yes, I'm cognizant of the needs of what we need here, and ready to get busy on that.
Now, are there any particular committees assignments you would be going for?
Along that same line, I want to get on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. Boom. Okay.
There you go.
That's where I want to be, because that can give us the guidance on getting those resources here directly. That's the need. That's where I need to be.
Now, is there anybody in particular up in the Congress right now, whether Alabama delegation or not, that you think, man, I can work with that guy or gal? Like, I'm looking forward to meeting them, working with them.
Out of 435, I'm sure there's somebody. The question is whether they are willing to and want to get to know me or not. That's another matter. But yeah, I've done this in my life. I know how to get along with folks. I know how to work things through, and I'm sure there'll be people I can work around and work with.
Now, and it seems, at least in our neck of the woods, like this is, despite the new districts and all the, people not knowing where they're at, what district they're in, it's a fairly normal election cycle around here. And I say that only in comparison to what we're seeing nationally. Oh, yeah. That does affect all of us. We're all Americans, all American citizens here. I mean, what do you make of this moment we're in, where the leading candidate for president is facing prison time?
It's a sorry state of affairs.
Thank you.
All right. The only reason we're in this is because of the mishandling of the government. All right. I believe that the Constitution is sound. I think the Constitution was a miracle that happened. Frankly, I think it was God-given, and I think we need to adhere to it as much as possible. It's the efforts to weaken it is how we got to this point. We've had crises before like this in our country. We've had several times when presidents served as president who did not get the popular vote. They got the electoral vote. And, of course, the way that's handled through the proper process. And we have survived along that line. We need to follow that process and procedure that's been given to us without change up, because it's proven to work. And when we change it, that's when we start finding problems.
Now, one issue that changed, I mean, a huge change in our lifetime, is the overturn of Roe v. Wade. And it could be very well, if you get the nomination here for the Republican Party, that the Democrat in that race, the general here in District 2, might very well make hay of the abortion issue.
Very likely they will.
And so where are you on this issue?
I'm pro-life. I've got 6 children. All right. I've got 22 grandchildren.
22?
Yeah.
Wow.
When you
Congrats.
get lonely, let me know. I'll send you some. No, I am pro-life. All right. I think that is the key factor. I believe in adoption. I believe in that life is sacred. I believe that we are in His image, and that needs to be recognized. And when we take life lightly, without the proper guidance, and we're lowering ourselves, and we're becoming less and less. Using abortion to select for any reason is bad, but when we start using it for other reasons, such as the color of eyes, such as if there's a potential of a problem, and you simply start over again, I think that's morally wrong.
Now, do you think there should be leave it to the states, like the court essentially kicked it
From a
back?
legal standpoint, I think that's the only option that we've got. I think that's where we were, and I think that's where we need to be. That gives the flexibility not only to the states, but also if someone doesn't like it, it's a more convenient thing to go to another area that where they may find more leniency, if you will. But at least that puts the controls on. With the federal, one size fits all does not work. We're too large for that, and it's too draconian, too totalitarian. How about that?
Oh, yeah, and it's I agree with you, and I agree that it should be more of a states issue. We do way too much at the federal level. One abuse of the federal government that I think has been systematic since I was coming of age. And, like tomorrow, every Tuesday, I kick off the show with Judge Andrew Napolitano. And one of our favorite topics kick around is the violation of all our liberties, but in particular, the Fourth Amendment. And I'm very skeptical at this point. Not skeptical, I think it should go with the FISA program. I think it has been systematically abused by the FBI on a lot of turns.
Are you suggesting that when you give the government power that they will abuse that power?
Yes, sir. Where's my Lord Act? Let me find that real quick.
Yes, that is correct. That is human nature. And humans run government. And it is those traits that come in to the government comes in from the human side. That's what will happen. The whole purpose of our Constitution was to control the human avarices, if you will. And it's worked well when it has been properly used. But when you give too much power, then you get too much corruption. And that's what's happened with FISA.
Well, and I worry that a lot of the tools, not just say the surveillance tools, but stirring folks up in the streets and civil society projects like we saw, say, in Egypt or Ukraine even, they're using here at home now. Like it's sort of like the tactics used all around the world have come back home, and it's like conservative folks or anybody that raises a little hell is on the receiving end of it.
Seems that way, doesn't it? Seems that's been talked about, the two-tier justice system.
Exactly right.
Yeah, exactly.
And now I think it's going to be a generational issue, is the rise of China. And, there was the hope ever since China was opened up by Kissinger and Nixon that we'll make them rich and they'll become just as liberal as us. It'd be like South Korea. They had a dictator for a little while, but they got rich and they were great. I mean, what do you make of this rise of China and what looks like it's going to be a generational competition?
It worries me. Very, very significantly. China is no small enemy. China is huge, monetarily, geographically, and otherwise. I don't know what their designs are, and that's part of my problem. But I do know that they want Taiwan. I do know that they want control. That you think about in the 1930s and how Japan was acting. It's mirrored now in China.
Yep.
We have the same type thing. And my concern is that we're not prepared to handle it.
Right. And goes back to initial points where I think our mission is so stretched thin that the one nation we should focus on, like a laser. I don't know if we have the will, capacity, or capabilities. I would hope we have the capabilities, but...
Well, we had a Marine Corps general just recently, 2 days ago, talk about how the Marine Corps doesn't have the Navy doesn't have the capacity to move the Marine Corps to where it needs to be. We don't have the ships now. We don't have the carrying capacity to take them to any place. That's the problem.
Now, do you believe in climate change and that it's the biggest national security threat to the American people?
There may be climate change occurring on a natural basis. What we as people are doing or not doing, I'm not sure we have the capacity to affect the planet.
Thank you.
Yeah, it seems to me that I'd like your thoughts on it, that a lot of these global schemes, they seem more about global control than they do about actually solving any real problem.
Just use the EV as a means, an example of that.
Prime example.
Exactly. That is a matter that we're trying to push an ideology, and more than ideology, we're trying to push a focus on matters that just will not work and is harming us.
Yes.
It really is. And so we're pretty much...
Look what's happened to Ford.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, at least they're finally starting to come clean and saying, hey, we can't do this anymore. We're losing $30,000 per vehicle. At least they're coming clean about that.
Yeah.
Because the government, no offense, but you guys,
Exactly.
they were putting the pressure on them. We're going to push this out.
They wouldn't put the pressure on them. They were getting no money.
Right.
And now it's not that that $30,000 deficit didn't exist before. It's just that now the feds can't pay
cover
it
it
anymore.
Oh, because
Okay.
maybe we're covering people coming in the border illegally too
Could
much?
be.
Could be.
Well, we're pretty much running out of time here, and I know you got to scoot.
Oh, yeah, we are.
But if folks want to volunteer,
Yes.
donate to your campaign, how can they do so?
Albritton for Alabama is my website,
That's
.com.
catchy. I like that.
All right, yeah.
I like that.
Everybody does that. Have you noticed that? Everybody's so named and then for Alabama. Yeah. I don't know how I got recommended. Maybe it's the same consultant. I don't know. But anyway, that makes it easy, right?
It makes it easy. Now. I like that.
So anyway, do that. Give me a call. I'm online, every place else, and let me know. I'm traveling here and yonder.
Well, I appreciate the time. It's great sitting down talking
Yes,
with
sir.
you.
Good
and,
to see y'all. Thanks
good
for
to
having
see
me.
you.
And we
Enjoyed
I'd
it.
love to have you back before Election Day. If you make Congress, love to have you back. And even not,
Definitely.
I think we got along great
Yeah,
here.
I'd love for you to come
you
back.
just want to be a guest one day, stop on by.
Well, you're going to have some DDPs here, guys. I got to have a DDP.
A DDP.
Diamond Dallas Page?
No, Diet Dr. Pepper.
Oh, I can arrange that.
Yeah, we can
Okay,
get it.
we can get that. We can get that. That's no problem.
Did you not? He had a writer? I didn't know he had
I didn't know he had a writer. I didn't know we could put that out there either.
Really
I'm going to have me a writer now.
More news and views,
Thank
folks. Thank you, Greg. After this.
He may not know whether